So this is one description of what happened yesterday. The FTSE 100 index crashed 4.7%, its worst slump in over 2 years, as investors, spooked by fears of another global meltdown, sparked a selling panic. Is that what really happened? And how significant is it? And what the heck is going to happen next? And what does it mean for the ordinary man and woman who can barely afford to stand in the street, let alone climb onto the Clapham omnibus? What on earth is going on? Let's ask Jonathan Davis. He's guaranteed, isn't he, if you've ever listened to him before, to put a smile on all our faces. He's Mr. Feel-Good Factor. Not. Jonathan Davis, hello.
Hi, Vanessa. This is Mr. Realist here.
Oh, no. You kind of warned us that things were going to get worse. I don't know if we realised we were in for Black Thursday, though. What the heck happened yesterday?
Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, the central banks in the US, on Wednesday night, it was anticipated that he'd come out and say that he's going to waste another a vast amount of taxpayers' money and pump it into the stock market to give to bankers. In fact, he didn't do it. So the stock market sold off because they didn't get what they wanted.
What does that mean?
It was quite the right thing to do.
So it was the right thing to do, to wipe off £64 billion?
The valuations of shares are in cloud cuckoo land. The fact that in the United Kingdom share prices are down about 20% from the highs earlier this year, and they're down 40% from 2000. Over a decade ago, share prices are still too high given the realities of the economy and profits of companies going forward. So yes, it's absolutely correct that finally reality is hitting home in the stock market.
Now, there'll be people listening to this who just think, well, I don't really know what this guy's drivelling on about. Plus, I don't have any stocks and shares. I don't do the stock market. I don't understand it. I've always thought it's either a bull or a bear market. What's the point? So how does this affect me? And I have this horrible feeling that you're going to say it affects every one of us, whether we own stocks or shares or not, because whatever money we have, whatever pensions we have, whatever pots of anything we have, will have been invested somehow indirectly in stocks and shares and will now be worth less than they were yesterday. Is that right?
In a nutshell. And to look at it another way, some commentators say, and I disagree with them, that the stock market is a forecaster of what's going to happen in the economy. As far as I'm concerned, the stock market is the following day's newspaper. In other words, it reports what is already happening in the stock market, in the real economy. So the fact that the stock market is down 40% in the last decade is telling us that exactly what I've been telling you and your listeners for the last 5 years, is that the economy is dire. Households have debts up to their eyeballs. The government has debts beyond its eyeballs. Banks have balance sheets which are irreparable. Countries, not companies, countries are going bankrupt as we speak. That's how dire the situation is. That we haven't in the United Kingdom, or particularly in the southeast of England, experienced a major trauma in the last couple of years is simply because the then government borrowed a vast sum of money and pumped it into the system. Of course, that's going to paper over the cracks, but you cannot sort out major terminal illness by putting elastoplast onto it, and that's what they've been doing. We now have massive debts in our system, and you cannot suddenly get rid of those debts and pretend that they aren't there.
I told the listener if they were feeling all right before they started to hear you, Jonathan, within 10 seconds they start quaking, trembling, shaking, palpitating and falling apart at the seams.
It's about time that they realised what the reality is, because the media, the politicians, the bankers, the estate agents continue to spout absolute nonsense because they are vested interests on pretending that everything is okay. Well, it hasn't been okay for years, because for decades we have been borrowing as governments, successive governments, and as households beyond belief. We are now at the end of the line.
Having said all of this, though, Jonathan, if we are savers, these days, we are losers, because if you're saving, you're making less money than you would be had you been spending. You've got the interest rates are so paltry and so pathetic that at the end of having saved, whether you've saved £100, £1,000 or £1 million or £20 million, you've lost money simply by sitting still. So you're railing against the spenders, the borrowers, and that kind of miscreant. But actually, the savers, the prudent among us, the ones who've been putting money away for a rainy day, are still losing, aren't we?
You're absolutely correct, and indeed I've written about this. It's going out on our mailing list just this afternoon as it happens.
I think lots of people would like to read it. Give us the address, because I've just had this. It says, this is from Farron, he says, that current guest, Jonathan Davis, is my personal favourite guest of any of them. Well done for thy insight and thy honesty, sir, he says.
Well, he's a very discerning individual. Anyone can Google me, and they can send me their email, and I'll happily send them what I'm sending out to thousands of people today. Look, successive governments, this is not a Tory issue or a Labour issue. Successive governments have sold us down the river. We continually vote in, because of our system, governments which promise the most for the least cost. But it's least cost in the short term, because what they actually are doing is borrowing massively, and our children are paying for it. The thing is, though, it was our children 20 years ago. Those children are now growing up. The people who are the voters now are paying for it. And you're absolutely correct. The savers are being decimated because the government's said to us, we have to continue borrowing, and that will sort out the problem. What that did was decimate our currency, which meant that everything we imported, which is fuel and heat and light and clothes and food largely, goes up in price because our currency goes down. That's why we've got inflation. That's why savers are being hammered, and that's why we've got a major problem, a crisis.
All right, hang on a second.
Economic and
okay, take heed.
System.
Take heed of this. This is from Glenn in East Sheen. He says, "Stop, stop, stop." He continues, "Stop. Stop, stop, I beg you, stop. I'm loading the rusty revolver now. P.S. Good morning, Vanessa," from Glenn in East Sheen. I mean, look, Jonathan, this is ghastly stuff that you're spouting. Whether it's true or not, it seems every time we speak to you, every word you've uttered previously becomes more and more ghastly and devastatingly true. But even if it is true, and everything you're saying is right, and every dire prediction, every confirmation of everything, all your hideous prognostications are all true, what the hell can we, the innocent man or woman, the innocent victim of all of this? As I said, we can't even afford to be the man and woman on the Clapham omnibus because we can't afford the flipping oyster. So we're standing here paralysed, or sitting paralysed listening to you. What are we supposed to do? It's not our fault, is it?
Well, in a sense, the people have colluded, because the people, as I say, have voted in those who have sold us down the river.
But let me stop you there for a second. In voting in, well, sort of voting in the Tories, which of course we didn't quite exactly do.
No, I don't say the Tories. I'm talking about successive government.
But with this particular government, this weird coalition government that nobody thought could work and possibly is or isn't working, with that government, with Cameron at the helm, I thought we were meant to be biting the bullet because we were getting much more swingeing cuts than the Labour Party promised us. I know you're apolitical. This isn't a political diatribe from you. I realise that.
You're absolutely correct.
But it's not really fair to blame us for this either, is it? Because we thought, all right, we'll take the rough now, hoping for a bit of smooth later.
No, people never vote for the rough. Turkeys never vote for Christmas. What they wanted was away from Gordon Brown. That's not voting for big changes that happens. That is voting for not the same guy. And it's interesting that Brown didn't massively lose the election because he bought so many votes with our tax money. And no, Cameron, Clegg and Osborne, they are the progeny of bankers. There's no way they're going to change the system. They are in the business of bailing out bankers, just like the previous lot. They're all the same. Bail out the bank. You know, the city wants us to believe that what's good for the city is good for the country.
Well, isn't it?
No, in the short term, when the city is making money, then sure, there's high employment, there's high wages, there's high taxes, it goes to the government. But in the long run, the city always loses vast amounts of money. And where we've got the system wrong is that we, the taxpayers, pick up the tab. That is not only stupid, it's also detrimentally affecting us in the long run.
Okay, how could it be changed? Who else could pick up the tab?
The bankers themselves.
The bankers themselves should pick up the tab. How would that work?
If they lose money, they should go bust. That is capitalism.
Yeah, but if they lose money and go bust and they take your mother's life savings with them, or your daughter's annuity, or the dowry that you were saving up to get your horrible son married off one day, and all that money goes fuck with them, then you get people who suddenly can't afford to support themselves in their old age. They've lost everything they've ever tried to save through a life of prudent endeavour and toil. That can't be right. You remember those people sitting outside Northern Rock in their anoraks and cagoules, shivering, huddling over Calagas stoves, thinking that they were going to be penniless in their old age and be sleeping under a bridge in a box. You remember those sights? We didn't want that to happen, did we? We needed Gordon Brown to gallop to the rescue using our money to shore them up, didn't we?
No, we didn't. And that's the myth that the politicians and the city want you to believe, that if the banks went under, the depositors would lose their money. No, what could easily have happened when the banks were in a dire state 2 or 3 years ago is the government could easily have got the depositors from Bank A into secure Bank B, and then they could have let the lending side of the businesses go down. As I say, the city want you to believe that they've got to be bailed out or depositors will go under. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Why didn't they just do that? That sounds like a bargain and a damn good idea.
It was a political decision. We were going to have in 2010 a general election. So naturally, Brown and Balls couldn't have the economy go absolutely down the pan. So they borrowed vast amounts of money, gave it to bankers, and they temporarily papered over the cracks. All they did was yet again kick the can down the line. Well, the funny thing is, we are now at the end of the line, and that's the reason why there's effectively no economic growth, why we've got significant inflation but no wage growth. House prices have not risen for 4 years. In fact, they're falling now everywhere in the country, have been for the last few months, and I believe that will continue. And yet the debts are still massive. No one's been reducing their debts because no one's got any money.
Okay, the lines are lighting up, as they always do whenever you join us on the programme, Jonathan, usually with people saying, help, stop, tell this man to shut up, I can't bear it, he can't be telling the truth, it's all too terrible to digest and contemplate. But Jonathan, you hold, because I want you to listen to Andrew on the line in Docklands. Hello, Andrew, morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Vanessa.
So you're phoning to say, I believe, that you have followed Jonathan Davis's advice. What did you do?
I did. I mean, I just started to study the economy. It's very, very simple. All the Keynesian economics you hear out there is absolutely nonsense. Anyone who's actually just looked at the basic economics realizes it's no different to you running your own bank account, running the economy. And I did lots of things to protect myself. I bought gold and I bought silver. I ran down debt, got rid of debt. I sold a few other little things that I had just in order to protect myself, and invested them a lot wiser, not in anything that's in the stock exchange, I might add. And that was how I protected myself. And literally, I would be in dire straits now, and I wasn't earning a lot of money before. I'd have been earning virtually nothing now if I hadn't have followed that advice. And it's the Austrian school of economics. It's very, very simple. I urge everybody just to read a few articles on it, and you'll see through everything that's going on in the entire economy.
So do you want to give grateful thanks to Jonathan? He's on the line listening to you.
I do. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
And may I say you're very, very welcome, and your strategy has played out beautifully. Gold has gone up 10 times in the last 10 years, while the stock market's gone down 40%. What we'll find is that the Keynesians who are in charge, and that's a school of economics, all they know is about printing money and papering over the cracks. Well, that does, of course, help in the very short term. But in the medium to long run, what it means is that we're landed with more and more debt. And, you've got Greece going bankrupt, Ireland's already gone bankrupt, Italy, Portugal, Spain. These are not insignificant countries. And I'll tell you, our time will come. I've already said to you live on air a couple of months ago that by 2016, most of our debt falls due. We will not have the money to pay it back. Thus, we will go bankrupt.
Just so you know, we've got people sitting here with their heads in their hands. I think some of us are tearing out fistfuls of hair, Jonathan.
Well,
okay, all right, here's the question. As ordinary individuals, we're not government, we're not policy makers. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
What can we do?
You first of all, you listen to people who are talking real as opposed to people who are talking up whatever it is, whether it's houses or the economy or stock markets. Look at the reality. And the government will not bail you out. You're not a banker. The government will not bail you out. Thus, you have to do something similar to what Andrew, your caller, has been doing. You have to be investing in things like precious metals, agriculture. You need to get your debt down. You have to stop hoping that house prices are going to rise so that in 10 years they're the size of a Latin American economy. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. Your house is not going to bail you out. You need to stop spending more than you're earning.
Lord. I don't know. I mean, lots of people listening will just think they've never done that in their lives. They've never had to. They will remember a legacy of years of being approached by banks or sent glossy, delightful, delectable-looking brochures through the mail saying, would you like to have a loft conversion, go on holiday, buy a bigger car? Here's the money. We'll lend it to you at this delightful and desirable rate. And that's the way we've been raised and nurtured, Jonathan.
Exactly.
You're giving us an unpalatable and hideous lesson, aren't you?
Exactly. Since Thatcher deregulated lending, the amount of lending has not just gone through the roof, it's gone to the stars. And we had an era of easy lending, what we call leveraging. We are now in an era of no easy lending, in other words, deleveraging. And it will last for not just years, but probably decades, because we have had a debt bubble. We are still in it. A debt bubble bigger than the debt bubble that they had in the late 1920s, which preceded the 1930s.
Okay, final question, because we're just about to head into the news, and also none of us can stand another second of this. Final question. Will we be seeing, buddy, can you spare a dime, people begging on street corners, people with, holes in the soles of their shoes? Will we be seeing kind of the Great Depression writ large on the streets, or will you talk like this? Will we get headlines like Black Thursday, and pretty much everything will remain much the same?
Nothing will remain the same. What you've experienced for the last 20 or 30 years is in great reverse. In the United States, apparently the biggest economy in the world, 45 million people are on food stamps. Let me leave it with that.
Blimey, Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. That's Jonathan Davis, economist from Jonathan Davis Wealth Management. We wouldn't keep asking him on the show if it were not for the fact that everything he says appears to come true. And it doesn't take long either. He says it about 3 weeks earlier, and the next thing you know, you're looking at something like this. Black Thursday, £64 billion wiped off FTSE over double-dip fears. Britain on the brink of economic turmoil. That's what he said on this programme, and it wasn't very long ago. He's a wealth management gentleman. He looks after the money of the very wealthy. I mean, everything he says is dire and ghastly, but unfortunately turns out to have a kernel of truth. And fortunately, he's apolitical, so he's not trying to plug any political view. He's just giving you the benefit of his financial knowledge for no money. Maybe you wish he'd just shut up and I've never asked him on the show again. I don't know. I'm sorry if you're upset. It's time for the news, but straight after that...